Presentation is brought to you by the Pacific Division Sheltering Leadership. Several housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted tonight on YouTube. The link is in the email you received earlier. You should enter your own hours for this meeting. Your mic and camera have been disabled. If you'd like your questions to be answered by our expert panelist, please enter them in the Q&A. The chat scrolls too fast and we won't be able to catch the questions. We will answer your questions at the end of this presentation. Feel free to use the chat to say hi to each other. This is session number 5, and we have 3 more sessions. I'd like to welcome today's presenter. We have Vesta from the Los Angeles region. Vesta has been with the Red Cross since 2019, and she's the Regional Sheltering Program Lead. She served as the HQ Sheltering Manager for the Eaton Palisades fire during the initiating phase. Vesta, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. We're going to address battle rhythm for shelter associates and supervisors. Okay, so our goal today is that our shelter supervisors and associates will understand the need and purpose of a shelter battle rhythm during disaster response operations, such that shelter workers are enabled to better prepare, improve situational awareness, and increase collaboration within and between shelter activities. And of course, this is with respect to the chain of command. The point is we want all of our shelter workers to have a basic understanding of battle rhythm since everyone contributes to a successfully run shelter. Moreover, field promotions do happen, so it really pays to be prepared. Our objectives for today, first is, what is operational tempo, also known as battle rhythm, and how does it work? The second objective will be, how does SCIA support shelter operations and battle rhythm? And thirdly, what are some tips to ease the battle rhythm of shelter operations? So let's get started. What is operational tempo, also known as battle rhythm, and how does it work? So we all know that no two disaster responses are alike. However, there are similarities. Sheltering not only covers the standard activities, such as facilities and dormitory, reception, feeding, etc. There's a lot of mentoring that happens with our workers, but most importantly is our clients. They are number one, and the pets, and of course the workers and visitors. We're doing a lot of ordering throughout the day, and now layer on meetings and reports, individual disaster care, such as health services, mental health, spiritual care, and our other mass care activities, such as SRT, which is Shelter Resident Transition, UDM, which is our unsolicited donations management, and reunification, or REU. Add that all together, and we have a lot to orchestrate. The question is, how are we going to do that? Shelter supervisors might act as shelter site managers, or we may have shelter site managers assigned, especially on larger DROs, level 4 and above. They will be providing oversight to our shelters. Regardless of the work assignment or level, it is beneficial to be aware of other sheltering activities and how they work together. In short, how do we coordinate with headquarters and across other DRO functions and activities? So let's get a definition first. Battle rhythm is an operating system, a deliberate cycle of command, staff, and activities designed to synchronize current and future operations of a disaster response operation. Battle rhythm involves planning, preparation, and executing operations proactively rather than continuously reacting to the environment. The point is to move and work as a team. What are some of these benefits? Well, let's look at structure and predictability. Battle rhythm provides a consistent schedule of meetings, briefings, and other activities. It fosters a predictable environment for planning and execution. Decision-making support. It facilitates the timely flow of information and its analyses to make well-informed decisions. Knowledge management, or promoting knowledge sharing, and management so that we can get relevant information that is accessible to the right people at the right time. And resource optimization, identifying the most effective and efficient use of our personnel and materials. How about flexibility and adaptability? A good battle rhythm incorporates maneuverability so that we can deal with changing situations and demands. And finally, of course, there's coordination and synchronization. Elements within the operation are working in concert and aligning efforts towards common goals. So headquarters and through the Incident Action Plan, also known as the IAP, sets the tone. The IAP does more actually than just synchronize the DRO, and it ensures that the activities support incident objectives for the next reporting period, typically a 24-hour period. It documents a consistent battle rhythm and structure to the disaster response operation. Here we have an example of a large DR battle rhythm that is established in the IAP. Might have, for example, an 8 a.m. operational leadership meeting, a 10 a.m. shelter support meeting, and more about that later on. 1 o'clock tactics or 2:15 meeting, if for those of you who are used to the form number. 4 p.m. we might have a planning meeting, and 6 p.m. would be an operational briefing. Sometimes this is an all hands. So here we get to see everything. Going back to the 10 a.m. shelter support meeting, it's not always there in a formal way. We usually only see that on the larger DRs, national level 4 and up. But that doesn't mean that we aren't still doing that work informally. We're still meeting with our partners and our other workers to make sure that we work across activities and functions. So how does this trickle down to sheltering? What does a battle rhythm and shelters look like? So here's an example of a day shift. For example, 7 a.m. shift change. Let's look across just the top here. 9 a.m. I might have a daily shelter report that's due. And in most cases for the larger DRs, you may have to get your fulfillment orders in by 9 a.m. as well. Sometimes we see it later in the day. 10 a.m., that headquarters sheltering support meeting I was talking about earlier, and 4 o'clock, we have to make sure we have meals served, documented, and the next day meals ordered. Here's an example of a night shift battle rhythm. 7 o'clock, we're changing shifts again. 9 o'clock, we're probably starting our manual shelter population count if we haven't done so already, because at 10 p.m., we have to document our overnight population count. So obviously backwards planning would say that we need to get it done earlier. And then of course, we're preparing for a 7 a.m. shift change again. Notice that the activities between those set times are also a battle rhythm for the shelter itself. You'll see stand-up meetings, we have meal times, lights out, shower times, and such. This sets up a battle rhythm for our clients. This schedule is grounding for clients during the uncertainty of disaster. The schedule is part of giving our clients a sense of normalcy and structure, which supports them to move forward. Battle rhythm does the same for our responders, especially new responders. So how does Gaia support shelter operations and battle rhythm? So SKIA is the Red Cross system of record for shelter client information. It's also a critical form of communication. After arriving at the shelter supervisors are expected and highly recommended to allot about 15 minutes to attain situational awareness via SKIA shelter operations. So if you go into the application, you'll see you go to shelter ops instead and pick your shelter. By checking your shelter reports and verifying existing orders, you're going to be able to know better how to proceed for the day. Preferably, you're doing this before meeting with your shelter team to aid in focusing the shelter activities for the shift. We have site summaries here, which are key to pull up with the dashboards. It'll tell you about your head counts, including your pets, population changes, percentage complete of demographics, CMIST, SRT, etc. In reporting, houses our previous daily shelter reports, meals ordered, meals served, and the overnight count. You might be asking yourself questions such as, did the concerns notated in the previous daily shelter reports get resolved? Things like that. And in orders, we're going to show the current open meal orders and transportation orders. So it's a great time to find out if something's been missed because you're going to need to order those meals if for some reason they didn't get done the day before. How about daily shelter report that we mentioned under reporting? Not only are you checking current shelter reports, previous shelter reports, excuse me, but you're also going to be putting in your own shelter report of the day. This has to be done by 9 a.m. So again, under shelter ops, we go into reporting and see shelter daily report. This is where you would create a new one. You'll notice it's so important that we get this in by 9 a.m. It's even documented at the top of the screen. I've highlighted that in yellow here. Shelter site manager must submit this report by 9 a.m. each day. And once you get down through question 16, you'll submit for the day. Here's a great tip. We not only know this is high priority, so we're going to want to take some time with the document. So if you are a shelter supervisor for multiple days, you might progressively work on your daily shelter report when you have time, and then save the draft. You'll see that circled in a dotted red line there. So save the draft until you're ready to submit the report the next morning. Earlier, we talked about fulfillment orders. And at this time, fulfillment orders, or E3, sometimes we hear it called that. E3 refers to every shelter, every day, every need. These orders are still being done by paper. Fulfillment only comes into play on level 4 DROs. Shelters order from an approved shelter necessities list, also referred to as the ASN. It's about 4 pages, and the PDF form is found on OneSource. On local and regional responses, level 1 through 3, fulfillment is not activated, so the DR relies more on 6409 forms. You'll also hear them called greenies. I believe this is because the form used to be called in a green form on green paper. And we use it to requisition goods and equipment. Form 6409 still need to be submitted and completed in a timely and proactive manner, which accounts for adequate lead time. And what about those meal orders? Meal orders, the reality is that your headquarters sheltering and feeding managers will ask for these meal orders earlier than 4 p.m., especially on large DRs, since feeding partners need to plan for their next operational period too. Current meal orders have to be marked as complete before new meal orders can be made. So you'll see here under shelter ops, under meal orders, we've gone to the management and history section here. We're going to complete orders that we have and make sure we go to the create new meal orders. At this time, lunch and dinner meal orders are made together. So if you do have to cancel one, you end up canceling both. Just be aware of that. And then you would put in both meal orders again. Meal orders can be done for a single day or up to 3 days currently. And the overnight population count happens before 10 p.m. again. Plan accordingly. The manual dormitory count will need to be performed prior, as we said before, prior to submitting the overnight population count. So give yourself time. You'll see that, again, we go to shelter ops and into reporting, where we'll find the overnight population count. There, you'll notice on here that there is 2 sections, one for clients and one for pets. We ask you to fill out both, or it will still be considered incomplete, even if you have a 0 population count. You need to put that in there. And you can see at the bottom, you can always look at previous accounts. All right. Now we have a good idea of how Skya enables battle rhythm activities. But what are some tips to ease the battle rhythm of shelter operations? Some of these considerations are at the very beginning when we initiate a battle rhythm, initiate a DR. The most important thing, obviously, is getting Skya up and running as soon as possible. That means securing those laptops. If that means as supervisors, you've already got 6409s ready to go, that's great. Get those laptops there. You may also need MiFi or Wi-Fi access. In regions and locally, you may have different ways of procuring that. Make sure you're aware of it, because the longer it takes to get that up and running, the more catch up you're playing, and it can become difficult to get that battle rhythm going. Of course, we're going to verify Skya access beforehand, as you would with anything that you're doing on a DR before you roll on. And as supervisors, you're going to want to check with your associates, make sure they have access, or at least know how to get them access, and what is the chain of command that you're going to go through to get that if necessary. Regarding Red Cross email, if you have one, you're going to check it and make sure you get IAP on it and that you haven't locked yourself out, that you remember your password, things like that. Again, you want to get in front of things before you arrive at the DR. For those supervisors that don't have a Red Cross access, a redcross.org email access, and feel that they are going to be deploying more frequently or working in blue skies, I highly suggest asking for a redcross.org email. It's important for communications and for us to work in teams, etc. It's a great place for us to exchange documents and everything. You'll also be able to get signage and such. We need to communicate battle rhythm to the team. And anytime we've talked about shelter workers or the team, we're always talking about anyone that comes through our shelter doors. That's any level from SA on up. That means any partners. Could be FEMA, right? Or we could have VIPs as they come in, county and city folks as they come through. We need to deal with that. We have our police department and our fire department and such. As they come through, it's really important that they know what's happening. Otherwise, they can come in and not realize that this is not a good time to come. Also, with your own team, it'll help them communicate better to the clients, for example, winter meals and such. Yes, that's a great point, Hillary. American Red Cross email addresses can be requested by your disaster workforce engagement people or your CDPM. CDPM is Community Disaster Program Manager, and actually the Community Disaster Program Specialist can help you with that too. It's also important that we make sure we can hit the ground running, right? Transition into the battle rhythm smoothly. Sometimes it can take a couple days, right? especially if you've not done this before, if this is new, or in the very early days of a DR. It takes time for the wrangling to happen and to get that battle rhythm going. But how about maintaining that? How can we even help the next incoming supervisor step in nicely? We want to do a warm handoff. You're going to write it down. This is why we have logs and why we have transition meetings and stand-up meetings. Pass it on. Be kind to the next supervisor. Arrive early to facilitate smooth transitions. It can be cumbersome when the outgoing supervisor is waiting for the next supervisor to show up and it's a little bit late. Things get harried because the next milestone is already upon us, or even because sometimes the outgoing supervisor has to leave for whatever reason. Just get there early so you have nice overlap. It really makes a big difference. Make sure that everyone has the contacts. Make sure that everyone has the IAP. Sometimes the new persons coming in haven't seen the IAP for whatever reason. Let's be kind and get it to them. Make sure they have what they need. There could also be flash reports that shift priorities. An example of a flash report might be that severe weather requires everyone to shelter in place until it passes. That can cause a kink in the shelter battle rhythm, of course. And make sure to check the IAP regularly because battle rhythms change. A lot of times that changes depending on what phase of the DR you're in, and also with who's coming on board at headquarters. Additional ongoing battle rhythm tips. Again, complete sky activities early. You'll notice that the previous slides at the top with the example times, it all said to get it done before that time. Please do not put the squeeze on headquarters and your supervisors and other DRO activities with late or near late deliveries, because lateness can cause a domino effect, and meeting battle rhythm deadlines early can mitigate that. Plan ahead also to anticipate and prevent avoidable surprises. Keep the operational flow moving, right? That backward planning is key. We want to avoid that reverse domino effect because you're going to know what you want to do. That reverse domino effect happens when at the top they want something by, say, 10 p.m. The next level down at headquarters says, well, then I'm going to tell people we want it at 9 p.m. And by the time it gets to the actual shelter, they may be requested to get certain things in 2 hours before it's actually due at headquarters or by national. If you can anticipate that, it will really help. Delegating is a good mentoring opportunity, right? It builds capacity and shares the load. Log the activities that you've delegated to, though, because you don't want to lose sight of that. So it's easier to write performance reviews later, too. Moreover, a DRO's speed and intensity can make it easy to lose track of activities. And after a week or 2 weeks at a fast clip, you yourself could forget or get muddled with timelines as to what you did when and on what particular day. How about that shelter phone? It's direct communication to headquarters and to other people trying to reach the shelters. It needs to be answered 24/7. A lot of folks are not used to this. It really makes a difference. Everything and everyone outside of the shelter, including the clients, can be calling that number. If there's anything happening, you're going to know either directly or through that shelter phone. That means if, as a supervisor, you have the shelter phone and you have to take a meeting and can't answer it, you've already designated someone else to answer that phone for you. And you guys have practiced your professionalism in answering that shelter phone so that we sound like one Red Cross. And use the IAP to know your chain of command, right? Utilize that chain of command. For example, headquarters sheltering and feeding managers. These things can change very quickly, right? What if someone gets sick and they have to change out the change of command quickly? This is how it's going to be communicated. Double check for accuracy of shelter contacts listed. Many times these things are going to change, especially at the shelter level. And then finally, it's really important to ask questions, right? Ask for support and such. No one has experienced every scenario, and no two DROs are alike. This is a team effort, so don't be afraid for asking for help or for support if you need it. It's critical that we are humble enough to know that we're going to make mistakes and that the point is not to assign blame or to point fingers, but it is to course correct. And the sooner we find out, a lot of times, the better. I saw a great question here. Do you have Teams on your phone? Yeah, yes, you can get Teams on your phone too. That's a great question and a good thing to check, Carol. Thank you so much. You can try switching to your phone sometimes if you need to. When you're doing things, sometimes you're doing it on your laptop, sometimes you do it on your phone. That goes with Skya as well. All right, and a word about shelter site manager specialty here. Shelter site managers are deployed on national level DROs, right? Level 4 through 7 per concept of operations. I believe we're at 5.0. These are usually people who are supervisors experienced in large and or complex shelters. They might manage multiple shelters or itinerate a bunch of shelters. So let's keep in mind that there's a lot of moving parts here. And Skya has updated and sped up shelter operations. Battle rhythm is not difficult in and of itself, right? It's following a schedule and such, but it's all the other distractions and complications that can get you, that can throw a kink in the battle rhythm. So if you need practice, if you want to do more at a supervisor level before going to shelter site manager level, consider deploying as a shelter supervisor. Find a position without the shelter site manager specialty. And try and deploy in large and complex shelters to gain experience. This is something you'd work with your DWE manager, that's your disaster workforce engagement manager, or your territory or area CDPM. Make sure that they understand that, yes, you have the shelter site manager. Maybe you haven't done it before, or you're fresh. Maybe you've been gone for a year or so and you've come back and you want to get used to or catch up with all the new Skya updates and activities, because there's been a lot. So go ahead and don't be shy to do that. We want you to be comfortable in the position and set yourself up for success. Okay, so we went through a lot here at a high level. I want to see if we have any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Vesta. And I do see a hand up. Before we get to the hand, we'd like to go through the Q&A first. Some of the questions we did answer before. And Vesta, the first question is, what sort of things can be included in the fulfillment orders? Can some specific client needs to be included? And if they're not included in the approved list, what is the process to request the items that is not approved on the pre-approved list?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so the pre-approved list, and I suggest you go and have a look at it because it's quite robust. It has no perishables on it. That's probably the key thing. So if there's food on it, these are all the non-perishable versions, right? There's the boxed drinks, boxed milk, things like that. We have everything from medical, and non-medical goods, durable goods that we need. Things specific to an individual client, you can 6409 that. We use a combination of both. And again, the earlier in the day you get it, the better. So for example, on the LA fires, not only were we doing fulfillment ASN orders by 9 a.m., we're putting orders for clothing. Sometimes we're putting orders in for some very specific medical things that were not listed on the ASN. But again, I encourage you to look at the ASN. It is really robust and quite surprising what is on that.
Thank you, Vista. And the approved list is in the chat, so you can refer to the chat. It is also on a OneSource. Once you log on to OneSource using login credentials, you can go ahead and search fulfillment approved list. Next question. We talked about schedule earlier, and we talked about the battle rhythm. Is there a schedule posted in the shelter so clients know what to expect?
Again, a great question. That is something you should be doing as sheltering, right? That as the shelter supervisor, it is your responsibility to make sure that everything in the shelter is following a schedule and such. So yes, please post that. You'll find that our shelter kits have got signage that have blanks where you can fill in times and things, meal times. You may also want to post times when FEMA might come in or small business may be coming in. Maybe there are meetings being held by FD or PD that you want to list. So put that all up in the front, in the dormitory, where people can see it clearly, and that gives them their schedule.
Thank you so much. And we had a comment from Cynthia earlier that with all the client's needs, shelter resident transition team, they're also able to help with the client needs. So as a shelter supervisor, shelter service associates, connect the clients with the SRT team so they can assist with the needs. Next question. Who gets set up for Skya access? All mass care gaps holders?
No, excellent question. So in sheltering, as long as you have a shelter associate gap, you will have Skya access. As far as the other groups go, it's going to be specific. I'm not going to say it because it's changing and such, but if you go to OneSource, there's a lovely chart there that SRT folks and our casework folks, health services, these folks all have varying different levels of access within Skya, and they can see different things. Thank you, Eway, for putting that inside the chat.
Thank you so much. And again, refer to OneSource all the time. One thing that you can do is you can do a keyword search, whether it's Gaia, whether it's Toolkit, whether it's fulfillment, whether it's E3 or concept of operations, you can always search on OneSource. Next question. On a smaller shelter, you have a day shelter shift supervisor and a night shift supervisor. These have SA under them. Is there still a shelter manager over the SVs?
There can be. It depends on the DR, and no two DRs are alike. When you're on a very large DR, we might have shelter site managers overseeing several shelters so that there's consistency in what's happening across the several shelters, day and night. On smaller DRs, we're relying on the headquarters sheltering lead at that point to work directly with the shelter supervisors to make sure that we are getting what we need in a timely fashion and have a good battle rhythm.
Thank you so much. And a follow-up on the specialty track for shelter site management. Earlier, we talked about those are the folks that will support level 4 and above disaster relief operations. And let's say it's a level 3 disaster relief operations for the division level. Are we still able to? So let's say a person that is not interested in deploying to level 4 and above, they're only interested in deploying divisional level operations. Are they still able to get the specialty track and to support as a shelter manager, as a site manager for a specific shelter? Let's say the shelter site is 500 population.
So this is something you need to check within your own region. For example, in the LA region, we are starting to encourage a shelter site manager type function, even at our level 3s, because we want people to get experience. This is more so for LA because we are what is known as a type 2 area, in that we are responding out more than we are having disasters within our region. Obviously, LA fires is a major exception to that. For your area, I would work with your regional leadership and functional leads to find out what opportunities there are for you. Sometimes there may be opportunities for you to get that experience to be applied within your region, but you can get that experience through partner or neighboring regions. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So what I'm understanding or hearing is that even though the shelter site management specialty track, the qualification supports the assignment for staffing of a shelter for level 4+ and above disaster relief operation, it is appointed or added by the region, and you are able to get that specialty track if you meet all the qualifications and you're still be able to support the local regions. I am not seeing any other. Let me see. Let me go back to the chat. I saw a follow-up question, and I think Cynthia is trying to answer that. It's, do we want to save up SRT funds for larger needs like rent and deposit rather than using it on small clothing type needs? Vesta, would you like to take that, or would you like Cynthia to take
I'm
that?
thinking that we should have someone at our Pacific Division level. Maybe Laura, do you want to address that?
Laura is not on the call for this. Cynthia, since you're the division SRT lead, would you like to come off mute and answer that?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question? I didn't see it in the feed. Thank you.
Yeah, the question is, so earlier we talked about, if a client has a specific needs that is not on the pre-approved list for fulfillment, we talked about that we can also reach out to SRT to get the specific needs. So the question is, do we want to save up the SRT funds for larger needs like rent and deposit rather than using it up on small clothing type needs?
Awesome question. And we always have some kind of partners in the area. They can't always come to the table with what clients need, but we absolutely try to knock on the doors of our partners first to support. If it's emergency clothing, for example, let's say somebody just got out with the clothes they had on and they're soiled, that's something that the shelter manager could take action on. But SRT should be able to fund some money for short kind of pictured needs and not try to absolutely save the money for the recovery of housing. Housing can be the major thing that a client needs help with, especially if their house has been major destroyed. But sometimes some people just need the simple things to get on. So we don't put it in a prepackaged game plan, and we look at each individual client, what they need and what their end plans kind of look like, and help work intermittently with each client where they need it. So we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom. So not a one size fit all.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So what I'm hearing is that when you have a specific client needs, as a shelter service associate, you should reach out to your shelter supervisor to share the needs, and along with our colleagues, whether it's for feeding, whether it's for disaster mental health, disaster health services, or shelter resident transition. And on the supervisor level, you'll also be able to reach out to your colleagues and also to push up the chain of command to the HQ sheltering manager. Cynthia, I didn't get the chance to introduce you earlier. Could you tell us what do you do for our Pacific Division SRT?
Yes, hi everybody. Cynthia Fisher. I'm in the Central California region of the Pacific Division, and myself and Candice Powell are the SRT co-leads for the Pacific Division cadre. And so we meet regularly to talk all things SRT, and we will be having continuous meetings. So if you're interested in it, we'd love to extend the invite to anybody in sheltering that might be interested in helping clients support in that way.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Next question, Vesta. What is the process for obtaining the necessary items for clients as soon as possible, especially during a level 1 and 1 to 3 disaster level?
So the local and regional disasters can be run a little bit differently. For most part, we're still trying to follow the same idea. Get your orders in early, get your 6409s. At the shelter, you're going to be working with your headquarters sheltering lead. Obviously, as you get up to the level 3 and so forth, you may have another layer put between the supervisor and the lead. Could possibly be the shelter site manager in training or an actual shelter site manager, but get those orders in early. Give time to people to shop for them. That approval, depending on how much it is and what, will go through various processes. But as long as you get that order in, then headquarters can move it forward.
Thank you so much. I am not seeing further questions. Laura Houghton, I do see you're on. Would you like to say a few words before we wait for another round of questions?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. Sorry, I just joined in, and thank you for all of our presenters and for eWay for helping to facilitate these meetings.
Thank you so much, Laura. Vesta, do you have anything to add? I did see something just popped up now, Vesta.
Yeah.
Someone asked about RC care. As a shelter worker, you should not need this unless you're doing SRT or some other position that requires casework or immediate assistance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. We have to stay within the role that we are, or in position that we are currently assigned to, and in sheltering, we do not touch RC care in the shelters. Another thing I wanted to add is that going back to that 10 a.m. shelter support meeting, if you are asked to join in on that, which can happen, the key is to make sure that you are prepared. It is a fast moving meeting that you need to be concise and factual with the status and the health and the needs of the shelter. You get about 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It's like a round robin. Everyone goes around and you quickly say what you need, and then everyone figures out what are the next steps, who's going to help you with that. And then after the meeting, you go and get it done.
Thank you. And we still have 15 minutes remaining. Vesta, I know you were deployed as the HQ sheltering manager for the Eaton Palisades fire during the initiating phase. And we're talking about battle rhythms, and I know you developed a lot of documents to share with the group or the team that they were deployed that time. Is there any lessons learned that you would like to share with us or tips for the general folks that, the fire season, well, we no longer have a fire season, but where it's predicted that we will have an above normal fire season or fire period. Any tips for us?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, we are already at over 3,000 fires, and the summer's only just started. Actually, this presentation was born from some of the things that happened early on because it was hard to wrangle at the beginning. It was moving so fast. We thought it was just a couple fires, and then we had many, many more. So there was a balance that had to be struck. We had shelter supervisors in smaller shelters, but because we ended up with 9+ shelters, depending on when you look at it, and if you include staff, potential staff shelters, because we had so many, we had to start putting shelter site managers in place. And as we got bigger for span of supervising and due to complexity, it was our choice at that time to include shelter supervisors in the 10 a.m. meeting because we found it was a great opportunity for capacity building and growth. But in preparation for that, it was really important. This is something we did days later, is we set up a 7:30 a.m. meeting so that those supervisors could have a practice at how they were going to present things, or if it seemed like they were too nervous or whatever it was something that we could get through at earlier and then try and just hit it up really quickly at 10 a.m. One of the other things that we did is that one of the documents I started building, it's a transition document. Unfortunately, I went down with one of the quademic pieces before I could finish that document, but we had so many signages that everybody is talking about that it became necessary to actually create a document that had little pictures on there of the documents that we were talking about. Having somebody going, oh, yes, did you have that one up in Spanish? Well, what's it? And which one are you talking about? It was easier to have the actual photos in a document on Teams where everyone could get at it and see what was necessary. Also, from day to day, we could be changing battle rhythm and who or how we wanted to get certain equipment and goods. If that was changing, the idea was to have this one document that we could just say, this is updated on this time, this was updated at this time and such. Another thing we can look at is it's never too early to start with the cleanliness. That quademic just swept through and got us. And I'm sure Laura could talk more about that as well, since it really it nailed Pasadena badly. And then it came through and it got headquarters and a lot of other shelters. So just stressing that and taking care of each other, making sure everyone's sleeping and resting, create your own personal battle rhythm, right? If that means that you're going to force yourself to go to sleep at a certain time, then do that. If that means, and this is a big one, make sure you set an alarm on your phone to make sure you drink water and hydrate. That's a huge one. So the self-care is big too. There's plenty more, but I think that gets you started here, Iway.
Thank you so much. And I do see your next slide talks about our work is possible because of you, which is of us. And the next question that we have is, how often do shelter workers have to retake online training, or how often do you recommend for us to retake the training?
Excellent question. There's two parts to it. First of all, continuing education is standard across all disciplines, right? Not just in the Red Cross. We see nurses doing continuing education because things change. Even in Red Cross, our first aid, we know that protocols can change. So stay on top of that. I would say if you haven't taken a class in a couple years, update it. Take it again. The ones in particular you want to stay on top of, Skya. Skya classes, if they're being offered, get in there. And that's changing rapidly. For anyone higher up, we've got the web EOC, things like that. When it comes to supervising, we have new ones now. Literally just retired the old classes. So I would say take the new ones. Anytime you hear there's a new class coming out. My understanding is that we have a new shelter fundamentals class coming out soon. When that comes out, I'd hit it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us the importance of continuous learning. Before we conclude, next week, Cynthia and Linda, they're going to share with us dealing with challenging clients, security, safety, and law enforcement in shelters, guidance on immigration and custom enforcement. And Vesta, before we conclude, I'd like to ask a final follow-up question.
Mhm.
During Eaton Palisades fire or during any large disasters, the initiating phase can be very, very chaotic. And what is your tip to the supervisors that we want, as the HQ sheltering manager, you want the information, like we said, whether it's the job director, whether it's the mass care chief, whether it's the assistant director of operations, and also understanding that the shelter supervisors, they also have our clients to attend to, and also our colleagues, the SRTs, DMH, etc. What is your tips for them? How do they handle this multiple needs at the same time? And it's during this chaotic 500 population, people constantly coming in and out with media attentions.
I'd say you really need to stick to that battle rhythm. That's your point of contact to level set and get a status of where people are at. Also, make sure you're delegating. That's why I mentioned it earlier. Delegate. You can't do all those things yourself. And communicate proactively, way ahead of time. When in doubt, ask, write things down because things move and change. It's really important to find out who you're working with rather than just saying, oh, DHS and so forth. Make sure you know who you're working with and who has the ball at the moment, because it's easy in the chaos at the beginning to have it slip through the cracks. I would say also be kind to yourself. Spinning up a DR is going to be different every time, and so much to learn, so much to do. Just follow what you know already, ask questions. You've got mentors all around you. There's no way I could have gotten through this without asking and relying on my partners. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Vesta. Thank you so much for your support, for your presentation. I'm going to give a few more minutes to see if there's any other questions. I am not seeing any right now. I saw some comments as in if we have updated class, that also means there's a strong possibility the content of the previous version is outdated and the new version will cover the changes in the doctrine and procedures. A reminder to update your availability on Volunteer Connection. 4th of July weekend is coming. We do need your support. So if you can go on there, log in your hours and update your Volunteer Connection. I see a comment to a previous question. As a shelter worker, you can make a referral in SKYA to the SRT person, shelter resident transition person. Topics can also be discussed in the shift change meeting for the manager to pass on and or for worker on the next shift to help. Thank you so much for sharing the tips.
I would recommend.
Go ahead, Vesta.
Well, I was just saying, I would recommend folks to get into SKYA now. Last week, it was all updated. As you saw from the slides, it's all blue now, so you'll know you're in the new version of it, 1.9.9. And I strongly encourage you to get in there and just practice putting in the new clients, transferring them, looking at reports and such, just in case things have moved a little bit. But most of the updates have been to improve flow and ease of use.
Thank you. And remember your login and password. That usually is the biggest piece that when we forget when we have so many passwords that, remember your login and password information. I do not see any other questions or comments. So thank you all so much for joining us. Have a safe 4th of July weekend. We will see you same time, same link next week, Wednesday. Thank you all. Have a great day.